Hello students, welcome to week 6 of Business 340, Principles of Management. There are a number of objectives we are accomplishing this week from chapter 11. It's all about leadership this week. We're going to be looking at leadership and explaining its importance for organizations. We're going to be describing level 5 leadership, servant leadership, and authentic leadership. We're going to be looking at task-oriented behavior and people-oriented behavior and explaining how these categories are used to evaluate and adapt leadership styles. We're also going to be describing the situation model leadership and its application to subordinate participation. In other words, how leaders need to adapt to different situations based on who works for them or who's around them. We're going to also be describing transformational leadership and when it should be used, as well as transactional leadership. We're also going to be identifying sources of leaders' power and the tactics that leaders can use to influence other people. Let's spend a few minutes talking about leaders versus managers. There is a lot of research and opinions about the differences between leaders and managers. The course text describes each of them differently. Leaders have the ability to influence people toward the attainment of goals. The emphasis there is on influence. And managers promote stability and order within the existing organizational structure and systems. Managers use procedures a lot. They lean on them. It's important to remember that neither of these is bad. Like leaders and managers, they're not bad terms or bad people. They're just different. Oftentimes the term manager is associated with very bad behavior. Kind of gets a bad rap sometimes in business magazines and that sort of thing. It's just not accurate. Yes, there are bad managers, but there are great managers too. Great managers are focused on the organization's success and are leaders who focus on people. You can be both. Check out this graphic on the differences between managers and leaders, and also compare this to exhibit 11.4 in your course text. Managers are not inherently bad people. They use procedures to solve problems. They're very procedure-oriented and very step-by-step, let's go get these things done. They take control of the boundaries of the workforce to keep them focused on delivering services and making product. And they also, managers work towards a balance of both efficiency and effectiveness. Let's talk about level 5 leadership for a moment. In 2001, researcher Jim Collins and his team released a book called Good to Great. You'll recognize it if you walk into anybody's office who has research books. It's a red book. It's called Good to Great. It rocked the business world at the time by identifying a number of reasons why some businesses are great and others are only good. One of those differences were what the research team called level 5 leadership. Exhibit 11.1 identifies the accumulating levels that build up to level 5 from level 1 for these sorts of leaders. And the graphic in front of you identifies those same levels, but with some varying definitions. Notice the difference between level 1 leaders and level 5 leaders. Level 1 leaders use their talents and abilities to help build the company. All good stuff that leaders should be doing. Level 5 leaders, though, they focus on humility in themselves. That is, they dedicate themselves to building up others so that those others can be successful. These are humble leaders who know how to put other people first. Well, speaking of putting other people first, servant leadership by Robert Greenleaf also emphasizes an others first approach to leadership. By definition, a servant leader transcends self-interest to serve others and the organization. And the graphic shown on this slide is an overview of the characteristics of servant leadership. Now listen, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Jesus himself was the ultimate example for us to follow in the area of servant leadership. His life was a living example of servanthood and sacrifice, all while being God's Son and having ultimate authority over the universe. Let's talk about management for a moment. As I said earlier, there is much work on management styles and behaviors, especially as it compares to leadership. One model of management behavior styles is shown in Exhibit 11.6 in your text and also here on the slide in front of you. A little interpretation about this grid is probably helpful. If you're a manager, let's say you know a manager, but If you know a manager that has little concern for results and has low concern for people, that person is a 1-1, an impoverished manager. They're a 1-1. They're in that lower part of the grid, that lower left part of the grid. They're called an impoverished manager. It's something you don't want to be called. You don't want to be that kind of a manager. If you have high regard for results, or production results, and you're very concerned about the people that work around you, you are a 9-9 manager. It's a team management behavioral style. Honestly, while I personally strive to be a 9-9 manager, I'm probably a 9-8 or a 9-7. And maybe I rock back and forth between that and 9-9, I don't know. And then there are other times when I probably fall well below that. I put a blue dot where I think I am. You can see it on the graphic there. And I'm usually very focused on results before I'm concerned about people. But I do try to balance them both and focus on them. And God is still working on me. He's still making me, still sanctifying me, purifying me, and making me the way He wants me to be. That 9-9 manager who's focused on results as well as people equally. And, I have to ask you, where do you think you land on that chart? Think about that. Okay, that's all the further I'm going for now. Be sure to read about the situational style of leadership, transformational leadership, and transactional leadership styles, all in Chapter 11. All very interesting research on different leadership styles. And finally, again, I've mentioned this now for 3 weeks in a row. Week 7 and Week 8 are just around the corner. Let's again review the assignments for those last 2 weeks. For Week 7's assignment, you'll be interviewing 2 managers in 2 different professions, and you'll be writing a paper about them. You're going to create a list of 10 questions that you'll interview these managers with and then write about them by doing comparisons and contrasts to each other. I want you to get to know these managers with these questions that you write so that you can write deeply about them. In Week 5's discussion question, you provided me some questions and to get for that interview, and I've given each of you some feedback to help you finalize your questions before you go off and interview people. Feel free to start interviewing people now, by the way. You don't have to wait till Week 7. For Week 8, you'll be doing a one-on-one presentation with me. Now, this is a 10-minute presentation based on Week 3's paper about a local restaurant. And for that presentation, you'll prepare a PowerPoint about what you wrote about regarding that local restaurant way back there in Week 3. And also fold in some other things that you've learned throughout the course since Week 3. Things about decision making, organizational behavior, leadership like we're talking about this week, managing employees. Apply that to that local restaurant paper that you wrote. Got to be a 10-minute presentation using Zoom. And my purpose for doing this is not to make you anxious and angst over it, but that sort of thing, but it's to make sure you're ready to do online presentations as you progress through your career. So again, be sure to read the syllabus and be ready for Week 7 and Week 8, which is just coming up. As a reminder, your initial response to the discussion questions are due on Wednesday evening by 11:59 Arizona time. The weekly quiz by 11:59 Friday, and the writing assignment is due by Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. Don't forget, I hold virtual office hours each Tuesday from 7:30 to 8 o'clock Arizona time, and you can find the Zoom link to my weekly virtual office hours on the homepage or in the course welcome tab on the how-to page there. Okay, remember, God is on His throne. He's always been there, and He's always going to be. Have a great week.